Pushkin. At what point during like a new album sort of cycle, as you're creating it and getting into like going into market it, at what point do you stop and decide what like the tour is going to look like and set lists and visuals and stuff? Like at what point in the creative process does that start to?
Well, I think this was an album that was really like early on in tandem with writing it. I was kind of like drawing up like Pinterest boards and stuff, and that kind of influenced the music. Like I remember, you know, kind of putting together this Pinterest board of kind of like what XOXO looked like to me. And a lot of it was what you're kind of going to see on the festival stage, like, you know, like the BMX culture in Miami and like the spring breakers and the kind of girls with the ski masks and it being kind of like this kind of almost like girl gang vibe and like the XOXO girls. Like I kind of was thinking of that while we were in the studio. So it's been pretty easy in that sense. It hasn't been very like, oh shit, what are we going to do? Because I feel like this album kind of started as I was like, okay, I feel like I've always been such a song driven artist. Like everything to me was always like, how do I just make the best song, the best, you know, like, you know, the best chorus melody, and how do I make this lyric really good? I thought of things as very just kind of like self-contained in the songs. And then I think as I've gotten older, the next level is having this kind of world or aesthetic, which I feel like Lana does so well, or, you know, like, I feel like that's like the next evolution for me is having like great songs, obviously, because that's so important to me. And that's like, obviously, like, I feel like my starting point is just like if
that's the bedrock for everything.
Yeah, that's the bedrock for everything.
But like, yeah, the songs for you clearly seem like the bedrock. But this album, good songs, but there's definitely.
Have you heard it yet?
I have.
Oh my God.
I have. I haven't.
What do you think?
It's really good.
Really?
It's really good.
Tell me everything.
Well, I'll say first time I heard it was with the new single, or the first single.
Yeah, I love it with Cardi. Yeah,
and it shocked me. You know, and
I love that.
It was funny. I think, and even going through, I love looking at YouTube comments because they're both like the cesspool of society, but also a bit of.
I love looking at other people's YouTube comments. Mine make me want to jump into this, not even traffic, just like some really fast cars. But no, it is such a good like just like. Human experiment project. Like, what do people? But okay,
it is madness. I mean, it's madness. There's like a bunch of stuff, but it's also like interesting to sort of just see how people are processing certain things. And it was funny over time when that album first, or when the song first came out and the video first came out, to see the amount of the shock that people had. I think even just like you going blonde, like shocked people.
Yeah,
you know,
totally.
But it's funny, like returning to it, like over the last week or so. You started to see people are kind of catching up with what you're doing. Yeah. And so I had a similar experience with the entire album, which was the first time listening to it, sort of just being like, wow, I was really
I love hearing
not expecting it. Yeah. But then by the third, fourth, fifth listen, you're
I love hearing that because I feel like that's a really honest take, because I feel like for me, it's like I've been living with these songs for a year now, and I've been living with the world and the kind of like aesthetic evolution for a while now. Yeah. And so I've obviously, for me, I'm like, my brain was probably like, just expects people to just be as excited and lean into it as much as I am in the moment. But it really is important for me to hear you say that it's so true. Like with my favorite artists too, like when it's something that, you know, you haven't heard from them before, it takes you a second to warm up, to understand, to recontextualize them. Yep. I remember even like, for example, Anti, like Work by Rihanna. At first I was like, what? Like, I'm so confused. Like, I don't know if I like this. And then I think it was like a couple months later, I was like, this is the best song of all time. But
and the one of the best albums of, and one of like that whole decade of her career of like R&B period.
And I think
good.
It also, I'm not by any means like, because I don't think comparisons like that exist, but I think I always like, I'm thinking about that now and I'm like, oh yeah, that also took a second. And I think it's so true when you pivot and you're trying to do like something new, it just like takes people a second, and you like shouldn't take it personally.
Absolutely. But also even before hearing the album or the singles, I was super shocked and excited that you were working with El Guincho.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I've been listening to El Guincho for like a decade now.
Really?
Incredible artist.
Like his artist stuff too.
Yeah. His
I
stuff.
love that.
Like he's phenomenal.
He's phenomenal.
And it was like shock. I was like, wait a second. Like because she's got interesting taste. Like how did it happen? Because he's not the obvious choice as
like somebody in the pop sphere.
Yeah, you're a pop. I mean, you're an artist, but you're a pop star.
Yeah.
Which I feel like you kind of probably have to work to appease both.
But I don't really work to like appease both. And I've never really been somebody who like, I don't really try to cater to what I think people want from me or expect from me. I really just like, every time I just kind of follow my instincts. And, I remember my first album, like I worked with like Frank Dukes, and, he had never worked with like a pop artist before, or somebody coming from like a girl group who was like a pop girl group,
Yeah.
And I think with Guincho, I think I gravitate to people that take risks and, make kind of like fresh choices. And I feel like he's somebody that has such a like consistent, fresh perspective, especially on like, because I don't even know it. I wouldn't say Rose is like a pop star. Do you know what I mean? Like she kind of exists in her own lane. And that's kind of what I'm working towards, is like, I don't want to be perceived as like a pop girl. I just kind of want to be me, like outside of that. But anyway, back to Guincho. Yeah. I mean, I love like weirdos in the music space. And I love like weirdo producers. I love weirdo artists. And I really try to like always like align myself with the weirdos, because I think because I feel like the weirdos are the ones that are not afraid to take risks. They're not trying to like have, what's been the thing that's working, and how can we make something that works like the thing that we know that's going to work. Like I feel like they're the people that are going to make unpredictable choices. They're the people that are going to, drive the label people crazy, because they're like, we know that this is weird. We know that this, is like a leap from the stuff she's done before. And I like those people because they make me also bold enough to follow those instincts in myself. And that's when I feel happiest. I feel happiest when like I make a song like, I Love It or He Knows, where I feel like I've done something different and something that feels like I followed my curiosity than just like having a big song that doesn't like excite me. Does that make sense?
Yeah, like when it's something that feels creatively fulfilling and it hits commercially.
Yes, totally. I mean, if it hits commercially, no complaints here. But I think if I had to pick one, I feel like I always feel better when it feels like, when I just feel proud of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, it felt in so many ways like the pop world was kind of just catching up to you anyways. You grew up, you're Cuban, you're Mexican, you grew up in Miami. Yeah. And it's been incredible to see over the last handful of years the way that like popular culture and pop music has sort of enmeshed with like Latin culture and Latin music, particularly from the Caribbean,
Yes, totally.
Which so much of the sound of your early records, your earlier records. So it's like, not only is it like a detour from what you've been doing, but it's like kind of like you're deviating also from where popular music is going, and popular music was like turning towards you. So it's like it's a really bold move.
Yeah,
it's really I don't know. It was really impressive to me listening to it. That's where you're deciding to go now. This is where you're deciding to go.
Well, I think when I'm in the studio, I really am just like, I'm writing for myself and I'm making music for myself. And if I'm just like, oh, this feels like, Havana Part 3, then I feel like I get kind of bored, And I also think like, I feel like this was almost a new take on, for me, like Havana and drawing on those sounds from my culture was like me exploring those parts of myself at that time. And I also was like, okay, what perspective do I have that nobody or other people don't, And that felt fresh at the time. Like at that time, Havana was like, whoa, like this is like super weird because it has this kind of like Cuban, like danzón piano, but it has like these 808s. Like that was like fresh at that time. Now it's like you said, like we hear that a lot. So it's kind of like, okay, like I'm just always like, okay, what haven't I heard that I would want to hear? And I almost feel like this album feels like the other stuff was exploring kind of Latin culture, Cuban culture, sometimes like the Mexican, like mariachi music on my last album, Familia.
Yeah.
And this one is like more Miami, which I feel like is like, it's like this melting pot of like you're driving around in Miami and you hear like Afrobeat, you hear reggaeton, you hear hip hop, you hear like a lot of these different things.
You still live in Miami, right?
Yeah, I still live in Miami.
Well, how do you experience Miami differently now from when you were a kid?
I think I like it more now because I think when you grow up in a place, you always, I feel like, just don't appreciate it.
Yeah.
Right?
Always.
You're just like, this is boring. And I think living in other places and spending a lot of time in LA and spending, not to hate on LA, but you know what I mean? Like, but to a little bit hate on
It's
LA.
fine. Hate on my hometown. That's okay. Just hate on my hometown to build yours up. That's
you know what though? It's different when it's your hometown.
It is.
Because I get
It's
it.
very different.
Totally different
Yeah,
experience
yeah.
when I'm here.
And Miami and LA are very similar in the sense of like people come to LA and they're always like,
That's tea.
wow, it's so flashy.
That's
it's so
tea.
whatever. And then I fly to Miami and I'm kind of like,
Guilty.
this is how people feel coming to LA. Because all of a sudden I'm
Guilty.
like, what? Like,
Me too. I mean, I
Maybachs
come to,
everywhere.
Yeah,
like,
I come to LA and I'm like, what? Like, I don't feel like the real people. Like, I don't feel, and you probably the same when people come to Miami, they're like, oh, you're at like Nikki Beach. And I'm like, no, I've been there one time. That's not the experience I get in Miami. I think like, for example, like making this album in Miami, like when I'm in writing mode, I'm like, I was talking about this the other day. It's almost like you're just like looking at everything with like just extra attention.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it makes you, there's this quote that says something like, look at your city with the eyes of a tourist, like with the eyes of somebody that's like never been there before. And I remember I'm trying to say like more and like less in general in interviews because I feel like I say like a lot.
good luck. I do too.
I know. I say it so much.
Yeah.
Fuck.
I'm trying not to curse in interviews, so I'm happy you're doing that.
Oh no, cursing is that'll be the last thing to go. But the likes, damn, it's just like I just insert it instead of a pause, but I'll just pause. But anyway, I feel like fuck it, whatever. I feel like I would just go into the studio and just kind of just and even be driving back at night and be like, wow, these lights, you don't get this like specific shade of yellow and orange.
Oh, yeah.
Anywhere else, or you don't get this kind of music, you don't get, this kind of what they call Miami English, the slang and the whatever. Anywhere else, you don't get the this look of the skyline. You don't get, I was just really looking at it with extra attention, and I think looking at anything with extra attention, everything becomes more beautiful.
Yeah,
and I think that's kind of how I feel about Miami. I suddenly was looking at it for writing purposes, for research purposes, and, writing down everything that felt to me like, like representative of her.
I mean, is that part of your writing process as you're living your life and going around doing things? Something strikes you in the moment.
Yeah.
Take a note.
Yeah, but I noticed, for example, like right now I'm in rehearsal mode. And so when I'm not in rehearsal, like I'll be like looking at the videos or I'll be practicing or I'll be whatever. And then writing time when I'm like making an album is the time where I have the luxury of just being like, I wake up in the morning and I, bring my iPad to like a coffee shop and I'll just like write down anything. If I had any kind of adventures that week or whatever, I'll just kind of write it down like a diary entry, or if I'll just kind of be able to have the time to really take stock of everything and write it down. But for example, like right now, it's like this whole phase of my life where I'm rehearsing. There could be tons of things I could be writing about if I was making an album. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I'm going to ask a lot of just like weird, because I'm obsessed with like the demands of being like a pop star.
Yeah.
And I know you're feeling like, and that's why I
I'm just
find
kidding.
it so
I'm totally
interesting.
kidding.
But it's
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
because
yeah.
it's like, it is a very unique lifestyle and unique
Yeah.
from even, there's only a certain percentage of people in the world who are in the arts, and even smaller percentage of people who are in the arts and could be considered pop stars.
Yeah.
So it's like, is there your life sort of is lived in phases necessarily?
It is lived in phases.
Is there a phase of life that you like more, dislike the most? Like where?
My writing phase, the writing phase is my favorite for me. But when I, for example, if we were in the studio for more than 2 weeks, I would need to take a break and then just live some life because I run out of things to say, because I usually just have thoughts and ideas. And then I'm like, well, I don't have anything else to say because I've been in the studio with you motherfuckers for the last 2 weeks. So there's, I got to go and go on a date. I got to go get in a fight with someone, something, because otherwise, I think the buck stops here.
Okay.
So it usually is like, for me, that's usually my favorite phase. It's like the year of like writing, and then you go take a few days off, writing, take a few days off, come back, writing, come back. Like I love that because that's a time where I feel like I'm also, when I'm writing, I'm devouring other forms of art as input. So I'm like reading a lot, listening to a lot of music, watching a lot of movies, even like going to see like physical art in museums because I feel like I benefit from a lot of input and then I get like newer and newer forms of output.
Incredible. What were the forms of, what were you taking in like in the beginning stages of this album or throughout? Like,
oh
what
my
were you
gosh, I
listening
wrote it
to?
down on my iPad. Can I pull it out?
Please,
okay.
Yeah, incredible.
I brought my iPad because I was like, if there's any podcast that I can nerd out and bring my trusty Patty,
please.
This is the iPad. I wrote down like some of the books and like some of the references and stuff. So these are the books that I read. Okay, so Joan Didion and the White Album.
Oh, that's a great book.
Great book, right? Candy House, Jennifer Egan. Bird by Bird by Anne Lamott. Did you ever read that? It's about writing.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm going to have to check that out. I don't know it.
Bird by Bird. My Year of Rest and Relaxation. Metamorphosis by Franz Kafka.
Wow, you're reading some Kafka.
I was reading some classics, but I was mostly reading, I was reading a lot of Sally Rooney. I was reading a lot of books by girls going through things in their 20s because I was like, I just loved the like inner dialogue and I wanted to have.
Hence Joan Didion at like
Hence
number
Joan
one.
Didion, exactly. What else did I write down here? This poetry podcast, Poetry Unbound.
I've heard of that, but
I love that
listened to
podcast. It really has taught me so much. These are just like things like kind of guidelines of CXOXO. But
what?
I don't know.
Hold on a second. Well,
I don't know if you want to hear.
That's the whole. That's the blueprint.
Well, this is just this is just some stuff. Like I remember talking to my therapist a lot about this album kind of being about questions without answers, and that quote that's like Rainer Maria Rilke. That's like Live Your Questions, where it's like letters to a young poet where he's like, I don't know what to do. Like, do I do this with my life? Do I do this with my life? And he's like, don't wait until you know the answer. Live your questions. And I feel like a lot of my songs before were very like, bam, bam. It's like, we broke up and yay. And, my oh my, it's like, he's a bad boy and ooh. And, it's very kind of these neatly.
Boxes.
Yeah, totally. Whereas I feel like a lot of these songs are almost like zooming in on one moment, which is my favorite thing about poetry, for example, where it's like, I don't know, like 20 somethings is like, it's like, you know what I mean?
Yeah. It's a lot of angst. It's a lot of not knowing.
A lot of not knowing, totally.
And not being sure of yourself.
Even I Love It is just like a zoom in on just a very tiny feeling.
Do you remember the genesis of I Love It?
Yeah, I do. We were thinking about, we had maybe like 50% of the album kind of done. And then one day I was like, okay, well, what would be our track one? Because we were kind of starting to mock up a track list. And I was listening to a lot of Cardi and I played this one song by Cardi called Miss the Rage. You know that song?
I don't know that one.
So good. But I was just like, whoa, the energy of that. I was so obsessed with, I think I've always gravitated towards synths. And this album, I was like, let's just go there.
You leaned in.
I leaned in.
Yeah.
And so Jasper started playing those chords. And then I went in the booth and I started singing the verse, the supersonic in your orbit. Na, 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 da, na, na, na. It probably wasn't all the words, but I do think supersonic was a word that was in the, because I usually, that's how I write, is like kind of like freestyle mumble and then kind of fill in the words after.
Cool.
Yeah. And so then I saw the guys and they were like, oh my God. And I was like, yeah, I love it. And the auto-tune kind of did something. And then I like kind of kept singing it. And they were like, yeah, like keep saying it, whatever. And then that's how the chorus happened. And then Gincho put in that Lemonade sample.
Right.
Because I think he'll probably explain too, like where he was thinking about it. But at that time, we were already like, this is a Miami album. And we were thinking of like people from Miami or Miami transplants or Spring Breakers and Gucci Mane kind of.
Yep.
Yeah. Like straddles both of those things, Spring Breakers and Miami transplant. And
Yep.
yeah.
Oh my God. That's so literally I was gonna ask about the repetition. I love it. I love it. I love it. It was just because they were kept telling you keep going on it.
Yeah, but I think before this album, I wouldn't have kept going with a choice like that. I would have been like, no, this it needs more words, right? And I think that in this album, one, like listening to people like Cardi, where it is, it feels instinctive and visceral, and then also learning that repetition is also intentional.
Yeah.
It sounds like the feeling.
There's a power in it's that Prince song, Joy in Repetition. There's like a joy or a power.
Exactly.
And sometimes there's like all right, because that's the thing about repetition. I love it. I love it. It's like cool. And then it's like halfway through, it's like, I'm kind of done with this.
But then you change the note or something.
Or you just keep going. And by the end of it, you're like, wait, I'm in. Like, this is incredible.
I know. Yeah. It's so true.
There's a power. There really is a power in it.
Because it hits your body differently.
Yeah.
Every time you say it.
Every time. Every single time.
Yeah.
What are the ways in which, because you worked with Jasper Harris as well.
Yes.
And El Guincho.
Yes.
What are the ways in which they kind of pushed you or took you out of your comfort zone?
Oh, so much. They took me out of my comfort zone the whole time. I was like, can y'all just leave me in here for a second? But no, I love that about them. And that's why I wanted to work with them. And I think that's why I probably really expanded my references. And if I would show up and be like, oh, like I love this song, then they would show me, 8 more kind of underground songs that I didn't know.
Dope.
And I feel like that really, just kind of like expanded, my kind of input folder. Are
there any of the names that like they shared with you that are on there?
Totally. I mean, I don't think I've really listened to. They are like were massive, massive Cardi fans. Like they talked about Cardi so much, and I think that made me like. Then I started listening to him more, and like, Eam Triplin. Pablo showed me Eam Triplin. I mean, so many people, even like Ethel Cain.
Wow.
Jasper showed me. They showed me a lot of like, I feel like amazing artists and amazing songs. For example, I remember this one song, Dream Girls, like we were in the Bahamas. We went to Bahamas. And
you and El Guincho and Jasper?
Yes.
Wow.
And literally we just barely saw the sunlight. Like we were just in the studio the whole time. I was so tired by the time we left. It was so much, but we got a lot of the album done there. But anyway, this was after like Chanel No. 5 and a lot of the, I feel like, thesis, which Chanel No. 5 I consider kind of like the thesis statement, like the centerpiece of the table that is CXOXO. Wow. And for example, like we were working on Dream Girls in the Bahamas, and I would write the verse or whatever, and they'd be like, yeah, like it's good, but I feel like it's like, I don't know, it's like Chanel No. 5, like you did that, like I feel like there's like this bar now. And I did like maybe 3 more versions of verses, and I was like, at some point I was like, they're just hating, like what do they want from me? But they were right, and I pushed myself, and I got the verse that I got like out of Dream Girls, because I feel like they are consistently challenging me and pushing me to be like, it's good, but it's not excellent.
Right.
Everybody needs people like that, like that's like that kind of, we constantly had that creative tension where we were always, getting into little things. But in a good way, because I think it constantly pushed me to be better. And I tell them this all the time. Like I was like, you guys have made me a better writer and a better artist. And,
was that a typical way of working in the studio for you before? Like, would you have those kinds of dust ups with collaborators, producers, writers in the past?
I did with Frank for sure. Like I think that push and pull it's important because it's so easy for things to just be, yeah, and it can happen even with yourself. It can happen with myself where I can be like, I like that melody. That melody's cool, and this lyric is cool, and that's a cool song. I like it, and it's easy to just put out things that are just cool, and I've done it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it's not a business for them. They really are about craftsmanship and about respecting the craft and the integrity of a project and the integrity of things. And they're real artists. They really are, both of them. And yeah, they really. I think the thing that I'm the most thankful for this project is how much I feel like it made me step my game up as a writer.
Wow. So you feel more
As an
confident
artist.
as a writer?
Oh my God. Yes. Yeah, totally. I just feel like I learned so much. I feel like it was a boot camp for me. And I think, when I listen to, even now, because I'm in rehearsals and I'm listening to older songs and whatever, I'm like, I can see, for example, where, this line could have been tweaked or this could have been better on old songs.
Wow.
Based on what I know now. Because I think before, I think I was just following instincts and doing the best with whatever instincts I had at that moment. But now I feel like I have guidelines for what I think is cool.
Yeah.
Can I tell you some of them?
Please.
And I was just thinking out loud. I was like, I feel like I became a big fan of just like show, don't tell.
Show, don't tell. How do you think that comes up in the album?
Like instead of being like he's so obsessed with me, it's like fold for me like origami.
Oh.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. That's a way better line.
That is a way better line. But
Yeah.
I hope that doesn't sound obnoxious because what I'm saying is before I probably would have said things like tried to be like, I follow this Instagram account called The Paris Review. And,
Oh, yeah.
And I
Great.
think Greta Gerwig said something like the only way to make something universal is like to make it as specific as possible.
Yes.
And it's right.
Yes, absolutely.
And it's like Taylor has been saying that for such a long time, and rappers have been doing that for such a long time. Where it's like, and Gincho is like a huge hip hop head, so he would always tell me, I would come in with my perspective of like probably more pop songwriting, which is like beginning of the story, middle of the story, end of the story. And he'd be like, in rap songs, it's like, you're in this scene, and now you're in the car, and now you're in the bar, and now you're here, and now, there's a glass, and now there's shoes, and the shoes are beige, and now there's, like, it's like all sensory and colors and painting all of these different pictures where it's like a movie that you can see in your head and like these flash cuts. And I learned so much from that. And I learned so much from rappers and hip hop, and the way that I saw Jay-Z said something that SZA reposted yesterday, which is like, when people are like, I don't know, like Paul McCartney is one of the greatest writers of all time. I think Biggie Smalls is too.
Yeah.
Where it's like
And I think Paul would probably agree with that.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
I don't even think he said Paul McCartney. I think he said somebody else, but I can't remember. But it's like, just like it's like poetry, and because poetry is so sensory and visual. And I don't think I was conscious of that before. I think like coincidentally, my favorite songs that I've ever done before, like First Man, from a writing
song.
perspective,
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm so proud of that song.
Lola's great too.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Or Used to This that I did with Phineas.
Yeah.
There's like, they're very specific, and like the calluses on your fingers. Like every time I was like, this is one of my favorite songs, I did that.
That's a good point. Yeah, that's a great line too. There's calluses on your finger, and then, I forget how long ago, but now I feel them on my face.
And and I admired them from a distance. Now they're on my cheeks. And I think Phineas and Billy do that a lot too. But I think this album, I was really like, this is what I like.
Mission statement.
This is
We're
my
doing
shit.
this.
This
Yeah.
is my shit. Sally Rooney does it. Joan Didion does it. And I just, I was like, this is the Show Don't Tell album. I don't want to do these universal statements. I want it to be as sensory as possible, which is why I think Chanel No. 5 is my favorite song that I've written, because I feel like it is written from that kind of like rap perspective where it's just like omakase, shibari, whoop.
There we go. Ad-libs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like all these different pictures.
No, so that's why that's like the mission statement of the album for you, Chanel No. 5.
Yeah, because I feel like it's like it has, I feel like all of my tastes and all the things I like coming together, which is like this like kind of whimsical, alternative, weird thing, and then like hip hop
Yeah.
in one song.
Were there other kind of guidelines you kind of wanted?
Yeah, I feel like Show Don't Tell was one.
Right.
I think the sensory thing was big.
There really is a visceralness like to the album, and it's, you know, what's funny, as I hadn't really thought about it, but
Yeah.
you know, we always talk about like the album and then the visuals, and then we
Yeah.
think about them as these. I think because there are visuals, and going back to MTV or whatever, there's always visuals. You can rely on the video to provide the, like, this is this is how I'm seeing. This is how you should see the song,
Right.
you know. But what is cool about this album is like you're able to see the song before you see any visuals. You know,
Yeah,
there's
and
a
I think
visceral.
honestly, I think that I was listening to so much rap, and I think that probably influenced, because I love melodies and I love
Yeah.
like pop melodies. Like I love a melody, but I do feel like I love when a rap song comes out and I like go on Genius and have to be like, what is this? What is this? They just there's like so many things, like
Yeah.
tangible things.
Were you like a big hip hop fan growing up, or not as much?
I was, but I think I leaned into it more for this album because also Gincho and Jasper were showing me so many more things too.
Yeah.
And I think when you're making an album with people, you kind of, obviously it's like, it's you, but you're also in the room with these people like 10 hours a day, and you're going to be talking about your favorite songs, and
Yeah.
wherever there's overlap, you know, like I feel like they're such huge like hip hop and rap lovers. Like I think we kind of like, that's what we,
Your love of melody, their sort of sense of like really like deep love of knowledge of hip hop.
Yes.
Kind of blending those two things.
exactly, totally,
That's amazing.
totally.
Talking about your love of hip hop, going on Genius.
Yeah.
Drake is on 2 songs on the album.
Yes.
But how we feel about this Drake? I mean, Drake is kind of, it's going through a hard time right now.
I obviously have huge respect for both of them, but I also, something that's really important to me in my friendships and as a value is loyalty, and also and speaking the truth about people that you know. And I really will talk all day about how generous he was to work with, like throughout this whole process, how much he really is a true music lover who was like, oh, like, you know, I want to like hear your album and I want to see the video and I want to contribute something, and I'm so excited about what you're doing, and genuinely, like, you know, does not need anything from me, but is I feel like always, you know, puts other people on. So I DM'd him.
Yeah.
I was like, hey, I would love to play you my album. He was like, I'd love to hear it. And so then we met up and I played him my album, and it was a kind of like a little bit more in the rough stages, but I played him Chanel No. 5. I played him I Love It. I played him 20 Somethings. And he played me some of For All the Dogs.
Wow.
And I was like, I remember having this moment where I was like, wow, this is crazy, because I listened to Drake before I was even famous or whatever.
Yeah.
Famous is a lame word, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, yeah. You got famous young. I mean, before you were famous. That's your truth.
That's
you were
truth.
famous. Yeah,
We're standing on our truth.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
So anyway, then I think it was like a couple weeks later, he sent me this kind of demo, this Hot Uptown.
Wow.
And he was like, what do you think about this? I kind of think this could be sick. And I was like, oh my God, I love it. And I went into the studio with Pablo in Miami. And I was like, I am not wasting any time. And I wrote my parts, like whatever. And then we kind of cut back and forth to make it sound like a duet and sent it to him.
Wow.
And he was like, hard in all caps. And I was like,
Did it.
Got him.
What that must have been kind of big for Guincho too. Like, I'd imagine,
Yeah.
right? Like that's a
Jasper is like the biggest Drake. Like we're always like, well, he's the best. Like he's the
How
best,
did you connect with
period.
Jasper, brother? Because I'm not super familiar with him, but I know
Jasper is they're both fucking geniuses. Like they're just insane. And Jasper is really rare to find producers like both of them. And I'm lucky I got two.
Yeah.
Where it's their taste. It's not even that they're just musically talented and that you'll be talking about an idea and they will pick the best chords, which Jasper does, but it's also he sees like a larger vision and he sees, oh, this flow would be so sick and like this person would be so sick on that song and this texture and whatever. Like his taste level is just amazing. And he's always putting me onto new music too. He's always talking about McGee.
I don't know
about
McGee.
He's always that's his latest.
So XOXO was first and then Jasper?
Yeah, XOXO was first.
Okay.
And he was actually the first producer that I reached out to for this project. And and so we did like a few songs and then I think I worked with maybe a couple more people and then I was like, no, XOXO is it. XOXO is it.
Well, it's interesting too because like I feel like
That's my
Familia
guy.
was the first time. I mean, you worked with Frank Dukes a lot.
I did.
But I feel like Ricky Reed on
Yes.
Familia was like
Ricky's
the first time you seemed
incredible,
like you
too.
like really bunkered down with someone
Yeah, it's
and
true.
like was like we're gonna do this like 1-to-1. I mean, there's more people involved on that record. But
Yes,
yeah,
100%. I think with Frank, it was like me and him, but it was my first album, so I was like, oh my God, like I had, the most imposter syndrome, and I was like, well, we must have the best people in town to help, and I think the second album, it was like that, but a little bit less, and then I think the third album, Familia, I was like, I want to do this with a small like group of people.
Yeah.
Like we can do it and it feels better. And I think for me, like writing is so, I'm just like, I'm sensitive and I just can't open up if it's like somebody I don't know. Like I saw it. I had to kick someone out.
you did. You kicked some. We won't say who. You kicked someone out.
I don't know his name. God bless him. But, like, and so if I can't be like vulnerable and intimate in my writing, if it's like my first day meeting you, that's why I think that it is also something I've learned. Like from now on, it's always going to have to be the same small, tiny family for an album because otherwise I just can't open up. And there were even some songs here that I would kick, I would kick Pablo and Jasper out.
Yeah.
Like 20 somethings and June Gloom. I was like, I can't write this chorus with you guys in here. Like, it just, get out.
But I was talking to Hit Boy, and I was like, because he did that run of like, he did 4 or 5 Nas records, like where he was the sole producer. And it was interesting. Like,
I
Nas
saw that in the documentary.
Did you see that?
In Hip Hop Revolution.
Yeah. Well, and then going back to like Illmatic, that first Nas record is the first time that like someone was like, I'm going to work with all these different producers on
Yes,
an
and
album.
they were like the top producers.
The top
at the
of
time.
the top. Yeah. Q-Tip, Premier, who else is on that? Large Professor, whatever. But it's funny, and I feel like that opened up a thing where people work with a bunch
Like
of
super
different
camps, like the
producers,
super
like these big
camps.
camps, and that sort of becomes a thing. But
that gives me anxiety, to be honest with you, because I actually did that. I remember from my first album, it was Frank, and then I went into like Max Martin's thing. And
how was that? How was the Max Martin?
I mean, to be honest, I was so young. I was like 20, which I don't know. Maybe that doesn't seem that young, but for my age at that time, I was like kind of 17 inside.
Yeah.
Because I started at 15, so I was just like, oh my God. And it was Max Martin. Like, I was like, what the fuck? What am I doing? This is so much. And at that time, Max Martin, I was working with Pharrell. Yeah. I was like, what is going on?
Yeah.
And I just wanted to prove myself to these people. I literally wasn't even thinking, to be honest with you, which is not the way to be, but I wasn't even thinking about what's going to make the best song walking out of here. I was just trying to prove that I was good to Pharrell.
Yeah, well, how do you do that? If you're 20 and you're in a studio with Pharrell,
I just literally wanted him to think I was good. I didn't even care if like the song. I didn't even care. I was just like, I just want Pharrell to walk out of here thinking I'm a good writer.
Yeah.
Period.
What can I bring to this? Really, as a 20 like that, it's like I could imagine that feeling.
So it was just, I think when it's like so many superstar producers, it kind of just makes me anxious. Like even XOXO in the beginning, I was so nervous. I felt like I needed to prove myself to him.
Yeah.
And I would tell him is the T, and Ricky too,
Good.
and Frank. God, I'm so vulnerable with all of them. But that's what you can do when you hunker down with people. You can be like, I remember, like, I would literally be like, "Are you comparing me to blank right now?" Because I'm crazy and I need more of a filter. And he would be like, "What? Are you kidding? No. What?" But then you see them as a human, which is where I need to be in order to write. I cannot see you as a superstar producer.
Yeah.
Fucking
And
freak
with
me out.
Gwencho too, there's just like a cool factor too that I could imagine. Like, I mean, I've never met him, but just like listening to his music, you're like, that's a guy who knows a lot about a lot.
Well,
you know?
he schooled the fuck out of me, which is amazing. But I love that. I want to be around people who school me constantly, because that's the only way that I can get better.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's like what I feel like made this album so creatively fulfilling and rewarding, is that I was in fucking school. Like, I was like, I was listening to classic albums that I'd never heard before because I grew up.
It was probably heavy on Latin music, right?
It was all Latin music.
Cuban music.
It was Latin music plus Michael Jackson.
Universal.
Period.
Yeah.
And that was pretty much it.
Yeah.
So I kind of went back and I was like, oh, what is this Radiohead that people keep talking about?
Right.
So I think, I just like did a lot of studying on this album.
That's cool. So do you think all of this is going to inform
The
like,
next thing?
The next thing?
Yeah,
Just moving forward, your career, your whole.
I think so. Yeah, for sure. I think I think like Gincho, and like, I think that I always kind of need to work with people like Gincho who really know their shit and just hold me to a higher standard.
Yeah.
And I think that's like, something I really learned is just really putting a lot of love and care into something, which I feel like I really did. I put a lot of love and care into it, and I just love it.
It's a very cool
What's your
album.
favorite
It's a
song?
great album. I still like, I love it a lot.
Okay,
Because
okay.
it's straight up, and it's like,
Okay,
I want, the funny thing too is you kicked it off with like the strength, the weirdest song on the album. Like, you didn't hold it. You didn't hold
It
back.
is.
Like, you were just like, we're announcing the album, we're going, and it is so, it's like abrasive.
It's abrasive.
But poppy,
Yeah.
and
I
just-
actually hate do you think I was right when I called it hyperpop?
yeah, I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know what that means. to be honest.
'cause I-
People say it. I don't know.
No, because I like said it, and then it was like this hyperpop song, and I was like, guys, it's not though. Like, it's so many things at the same time.
Yeah, it's a lot of things. I mean, it's
a lot of things.
It's a very cool. It's a visceral record. I mean, there's stuff on it that sounds like that no wave stuff, like that early late '70s, early '80s New York, like underground club stuff.
Yeah.
Like, it's just so, it's such a, I don't know, just oozes like a cool, I think that I love it
Yeah.
thing. And,
It is. I also think like that's I was telling my choreographer, my choreographers Calvin and Sarah yesterday, who I've worked with for a long time, because we have like, I love it, and we have like Dade County Dreaming. Did you hear Dade County Dreaming?
Yeah. I didn't get you the album enough because I got sent a stream and the link was,
no.
but
Okay,
I
I'll send
can't
you
wait
another.
to
I'll
hear
send
it.
you another
Like,
one. But
yeah.
like on both of those songs, I feel like I feel like mainly most of those songs, Man, Hot Uptown, and I don't know, and Chanel, but mostly I
the
would
Lil Nas X cut is really cool too. I mean, he sounds like
my
really, he sounds amazing on
no,
it.
he went crazy on his verse. Like,
How did that happen? Like,
he's really close with Jasper.
okay.
And so I think we were always just kind of like in the same family circles. And Jasper like played him my album, and he loved it. And I think we've always been like kind of like loving and supportive of each other for the past, like, since we've met like 6 years ago.
Yeah.
And I just always loved him. I just think he's like such an incredible artist. And we were thinking of like who to have on that song. And Jasper was like, oh, like, what about Nas? And he had never done a feature before at that time. So I was like, oh, I don't know if he's going to do it. But we asked, and we were so excited about the idea of like us both singing about the same guy or fighting over the same guy. Because it's just like, I just never seen that before.
such a funny concept and
In
perfect
his
timing
head,
with like
right?
challenges having just come out like
Wait,
fighting for the
right?
same
Yeah,
person.
I know,
It's like
so true.
that kind of drama of that.
So true.
And he sound like I wasn't sure what to expect from it. You know, like
know.
what he would sound like on it, and it is a really cool like. I don't know. It sounds like he's almost in character or something. Like
Well,
there's
he's
just like
playing with new stuff too, because he said the other day he was playing with the kind of like Jamaican, like New York, like the sounds, like the or whatever. Like he's kind of exploring different things in his different pockets too.
That's so cool.
But I was gonna say about Dade County Dreaming, and I love it. I feel like those were feelings that I always put on other people's music to tap into, like this feeling of like bravado or cockiness or like, like, which I feel like rap gives you, like this feeling of just like, can't fuck with me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Those songs have that.
And yeah, I'm just like excited that I get to I feel like I'm able to embody that now in my own music.
I love it. Have you had a chance to go to Cuba?
I was born there.
But like back?
When I was 14.
When you're 14, you went
Yeah,
back?
I was 14.
What was how was that?
I haven't been able to go again just because like passport issues and stuff like that. But it was like right before I auditioned for X Factor. And my grandma was still living there at the time. Now she lives in Miami. Cool. And I had tons of family there. I still have family there, but a lot of people have come to Miami now, thank God.
Yeah.
Honestly, what I mostly remember is like I was like obsessed with Justin Bieber at the time. They had no internet.
Yeah.
And like they only had like the like a email app and like solitaire, but they had no internet at all. So when the whole world was obsessed with like Justin Bieber, they're like, we don't know who that is. And I was like, no, guys. Justin Bieber.
Now they know. Now they for sure know.
I don't know. I haven't been back, but the situation is rough.
It's bad. I was there a few years back. And
were you?
Yeah,
what was your experience like?
Very, very strange. Like it was a weird experience because the people are so incredible.
The people are just precious.
Some of the greatest people on the planet that I've come across.
Warm, so generous, so loving.
Yep.
My mommy's Cuban.
Yeah, that's who it is, right? Yeah, yeah. There's a warmth, man.
There's
just
a
a
warmth.
But then obviously, but then you're like also balancing that with like, and obviously the country itself is beautiful. The
terrain, the landscape,
the landscape's insane. But then you're also acknowledging I remember we met a guy there. Amazing guy, so cool, and he was like showing us around, and so we were like, come have dinner, like let's get you dinner. And he was like, this is the first time I've had like lobster in 20 years. I go, Dog, you live by the ocean. What do you mean? He's like, well, we can't.
My mom never had lobster until I, had money now, but she never had lobster. They barely had meat or chicken or eggs. They had like 4 eggs a month.
Yeah. It's a really, I don't know. I always recommend it for people to go because you just can't. I don't know if that level of it's just so bifurcated. It's so weird. My thinking on it is so strange. Where it's like people are beautiful, terrain's beautiful, it's lovely, and the music's incredible. I've never been to a more musical place in my life.
Yes.
New Orleans would be second, which is saying something.
Yes, totally.
But then you're like, man, these people have like there's no help. It's like it's kind of tragic. It's very tragic.
I know. I wonder. Like, I feel like music and that warmth and that generosity is also like has evolved out of that pain too, and that hardship,
right? Which is another tough thing to stomach. It's like all that pain did bring a certain level of beauty out of
totally
out of the
Have you ever
country
seen this
people.
documentary Cuba and the Cameraman?
No.
It's on Netflix. It's amazing. It was the first time that I understood, because I had always heard my grandma and my mom talking about the different phases of the Cuban Revolution, and then what the situation was looking like when my mom left to go to Mexico. But that documentary, it's the same guy shot on one camera, 40 years of traveling to Cuba, I think every 10 years.
Wow.
So you see in the beginning, everything is amazing. And then maybe 20 years later, you see him going to the supermarkets and there's nothing on the shelves.
Wow.
You see him, going up to people and he's like, can I get a beer? Can I get some meat? They're like, we don't have anything. It was just the first time that I was like, oh wow, I'm seeing now through visuals and images what my grandma and my mom lived and we're talking
Because you
about.
didn't understand that by the time you left, right? When you were
No,
there.
no,
You
no,
didn't-
no. I mean, I was 7, so
Yeah.
I definitely, I would, as a kid, you have no stresses, and your parents, my parents, I feel like always kind of carried the burdens for me. Like they never, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, I was having a great time. But now I have cousins that, like in the past, every year I feel like I have new family members that come because we're trying to get more and more people kind of out.
Yeah.
And yeah, the things that they say is like, it's so crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why did your dad go to Cuba, by the way? Because he's from Mexico City.
My dad is from Mexico. He only went to Cuba after my mom was pregnant with me.
Okay.
And it was just like to kind of visit family.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, man. It's just such an interesting background that you have. The I don't know.
I feel very lucky
Yeah.
because I just love having access to like my Cuban side and my Mexican side, like the people, like the food in Miami. Like I feel so happy that there's actually one song that didn't make the album because it's like not XOXO, but it was called Broken English that I wrote about my mom.
Oh, cool.
And there's like this one line that was like empty chairs at like a Christmas dinner table or whatever, because that's like how Cuban people always describe like just like immigrant families. And for so long, it was like my holidays were like, just me, my mom, and my dad. And then my sister was born and just the 4 of us. And now we're having more and more family come. And it feels very healing for me because I get to have cousins around and I get to, I don't know, just like have access to a lot of things about me that were probably just like in me, but I didn't know that, oh, my cousin has that same, I don't know, like habit as me or like she has the same tick as my mom or whatever. Like it like feels very healing for me.
Oh, it's incredible. Yeah, and I hope you get to go back one day.
Me too. But even Miami in that way feels very healing for me because I get to spend time with them. And yeah, it's just like, it feels like the new home that we've all had to make because we can't ever like really go back to Cuba or we wouldn't
At least
go
for
back to
now,
Cuba or go to Mexico. So it feels like Miami is like, okay, this is like where the new family line is being kind of created.
It's amazing. Well, Camila, thank you so much for making the album and for coming to LA and talking to us about it. I know you'd rather be in Miami, but you're here in my hometown.
No, because then I
appreciate
wouldn't have gotten to meet you, and you're so lovely.
You're really good with people. Thank you.
Oh, stop it. No, I really mean it. You
Flattering
have
you.
really great energy.
Oh, thank you.
You have very calming, kind energy.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
Welcome.
Thanks for checking out Broken Record on YouTube. If you want to listen to us on the go, be sure to subscribe to Broken Record wherever you listen to podcasts.